Welcome back to Corn Fed with a side of Cajun sauce. I'm the Corn Fed host of the podcast, Joel Lincoln. I'm joined today by the Cajun sauce, Tony Sterling. How we doing, Tone?
Doing good. Been a busy, couple weeks, but we back at it.
Yes,
Whatever.
sir. Well, it was a busy couple of weeks. I just got to see Tony down in Houston last week for the USA Boys and Girls Gold Camp. Tone. Not only was it hot as all get out in Houston, but there was a lot of good networking, good coaching, and especially good players. So, what were your biggest takeaways from USA Camp this past weekend here down in Houston?
Mainly, with Coach Amorosa at Straight Jesuit with the great facilities that he has, and also the coaches that were there. As you do all these camps and clinics, just meeting people, you see how small the basketball world is. And everybody teaching the same language when it comes to fundamentals. So that was always good to see. But overall in Houston, it was a great camp.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to shout out. Yeah, I thought the coaching staff. Yeah, Coach Amoroso was an amazing host. I do want to give a personal thank you to him. He was able. I had a little presentation that we'll touch on later about player development, but Strake Jesuit has probably the best facility high school wise I've ever been into, and they had a thing called Score Vision for their scoreboard. It acted as if it was an Apple TV. So anybody that's putting together a new facility, make sure you're reaching out to Coach Amorosa in Score Vision. They can do some amazing things, not only with their scoreboard, but then the applications that has for practice, from being able to watch film to giving directions, all that stuff. I thought it was amazing. I thought Kelly Carruthers did a great job. She was the director for the girls, and she's coached for the USA Basketball 3-on-3. She's actually going to be down here this next week for the U.S. Open here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. But I thought she did a great job, especially directing for the girls. A little bit smaller group of girls, but I was very impressed with not only their coachability, but how she directed and connected with everyone. I do also, we had our friend Alex Washington there, and he did an excellent job with his off court. Tone, of the local coaches there from Texas, how many you had known Coach Omarosa? Had you known Coach Shaver at all from Lake Travis?
I didn't know Coach Shave until this past weekend. Actually, he told me he played for Coach Mike McConaughey in college at Northwestern State. So I go back to what I said earlier with how small the basketball world is. It was kind of unique to run into getting to know him the first time, and he telling me that. So we kind of knew the same people, and also with
Mm-hmm.
Coach Amorosa, he spent his early coaching career in Shreveport, Louisiana
Man.
as well.
Mm-hmm. No, it's all about the
So it's
boot, man.
kind of
It's all about the boot.
I wish.
No, yeah. And speaking of the boot, I know you're right there in Denham Springs, right next to Baton Rouge. And I know Coach Moore on the men's side. Have you been able to check out anything they're doing on the women's side with Coach Mulkey at all?
No. I think with the first couple of weeks of them just trying to get some chemistry going with the players and the staff and all that. So they try to keep the distractions and people out of the practice the first couple of weeks of when they're doing everything because they're trying to get in the groove of getting the kids in summer school, weightlifting, practice and stuff like that. So I have yet to you know go and watch either
Yeah.
the men's or the women's team, but I'm pretty sure I will.
Yeah,
So
because that's, I mean, right there. And obviously, with Coach Moore there with the men's, and I think they do a great
yeah,
job of making it,
then on top of recruiting, I think they last last week they started contacting kids. So they're pretty busy. So we touch
Yeah.
base, every
Yep.
now and then through text.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten, this past weekend was the live weekend. Speaking of USA basketball, this wasn't on our show notes, Tone, but I do want to get your idea or your thoughts as somebody that's been involved, obviously, with Elite and Elite 100, which we'll touch on our next sub segment, but also being consistent in that high school and now seeing USA basketball pivoting a little bit of that recruiting calendar and giving the high school coaches, bringing them back into the fold. What does that look like specifically down in Louisiana here? Because I know we've got Section 7, our friend Ernie Lopez is doing that over in Phoenix. Obviously, there's a ton with Northeast. There's, our friend Nicole Dixon is running it for the girls in Georgia. But what does that look like with that high school live period that they added? What does that look like in Louisiana and just nationally in general from different coaches you're speaking with?
Well, this is at the top one this week for the top 100 kids from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 30. I think it's 30 Arkansas kids, maybe 50 Louisiana kids, and maybe 20 Mississippi kids. But they actually started this camp last year for the first time, and it did pretty well last year. Now it's pretty. I mean, since they went through it last year, and they looked at all what they could do right and stuff like that, and this be my first time helping out with it. We have a player in our program that's coming down to perform in it and stuff, and gonna be a bunch of coaches, college coaches coming in and out looking at talent, things
Yeah.
like
And
that.
yeah, they've definitely streamlined that. There's one thing I know talking to different coaches, different regions, different things, is it did streamline a little bit of that. The one thing I'm curious about is, and being a part of this, not selection committee, but being in different exposure events and different things where people are invite only or, sign up qualifications like the USA basketball gold camps are, where there is, an application process. Most players, if you play club basketball, will get into the gold camps, but how does the selection go where you're pulling from those 3 states where there's a ton of athletes? Obviously, you're competing with football to a certain extent down there in the South, especially Louisiana and the states you just mentioned. So how does that selection process usually play out?
I mean, it usually play out with the accolades that the players got, during the season,
Mm-hmm.
from all state, all district, all area, but
No,
it
that
first starts with the head coach, selecting. Only the high school coaches can select a player to get nominated for the top 100 camp. Then you gotta put all the accolades that they had and stuff like that, and that's a deadline on that or whatever. And Chris Kovac and Butch Stockton do a really good job reaching out to the high school coaches in Louisiana, to get everything going.
That's
So
great. Yeah, because
yeah.
I'm glad to hear they are involving the high school coach in that, and like that makes sense because coming from in Oregon, there was a lot of different things that played into it, but that was one thing. When I was there, we didn't have these sort of live events, but I know for selection of teams or invites to this sneakers tryout or this team or whatever, sometimes it was hard to get the right kids, the actual best kids in the building because of things that are affected off the court, whether that be relationships, whether that be, hey, this kid's always played for this club and we don't have that connection. So I'm glad to hear that they've involved those high school coaches into, and it actually does matter what happens in the winter. And another Elite 100 camp you were actually just at a few weeks ago, and why we were not able to record last week was Tony was in St. Louis for the Nike Elite 100 camp. Tone. So if you could just let the listeners know, number one, what was that camp like in terms of format? What was the day-to-day like? How many days was it? Things like that.
Oh, it was 4 days. I mean, they're first class from, stuff like this that they put up or whatever with not just with the coaches, the people that run, the camp or the, the people that work at the University of St. Louis. Um, my biggest takeaway from it is with far as games, they play games back to back to back. And it's almost it's trying to simulate those type of games if they were in the NBA, playing back to back games, every night just to see how the kids react to being sore, being tired, stuff like that. Because, when your body is tired, you don't want to get up in the morning to do workouts. Like you kind of see the character
Yeah.
of a player when adversity strikes, which is good adversity. So like
Mhm.
we had 10 to 11 players on each team or whatever, and we had 10. We ended up with like 7 at the end or whatever, stuff like that because some of the kids were sore. Some of them got injured, no major injuries, but they had to really like rest so they can take care of the body. Like from the player perspective, I think, if I was a player and I knew that I didn't play in every game, I can go back home and, work on my endurance. Like, do I have to lift weights more? Do I have to eat right? Do I have to get, enough sleep? Because that's the most important thing with, staying fit. Then the other
Yeah.
thing is, how can I perform? How can I change my game? Most of the kids want to play the same way. But
Yeah.
how can I change my game from how I feel mentally and physically, and two, with the role that I'm playing with my team, and three, what the coach wants me to do. So that was the biggest,
Yeah.
takeaway from it. But overall, like with Corey Alexander, um, John Stovall, Carlton DeBose, um, and Rasheed Wallace, being around those guys because they don't been around NBA players. They don't seen every elite player that's in the NBA now possible. Just
Yep.
hearing their stories. Then on top of that, seeing the business side of how Nike does things. It was a great experience
Well, excellent. I
with
do want to ask a couple more questions. So I think that's important. I think one thing you touched on is being in shape. And that was one thing I was just talking to a friend of mine who he's going to be going to Japan to start coaching. And, I was just talking to him about, what, he's been in the NBA. Now he's pivoting, going to try a different role internationally. And the one thing he said, world-class shape is still world-class shape. And he went over there a couple of weeks ago just to spend a little time, meet the club, meet the players, front office and things like that. And, that's always something that stuck out to me. And I think working different events, working different camps, when players are in shape, it shows that you're disciplined, you have a high level of accountability, you're committed because aren't just accidentally in shape. You're, as a 15 to 18-year-old kid, you can wake up out the bed and go play 1 or 2 games pretty hard. And if you're an elite player, like probably at a pretty elite level, but it's that, that third game, that fourth game. And I love that they talked about, how you respond to that adversity, but what sorts of things. So obviously there's a game, there's the 4 days, and there's some other things. What else was kind of supplemental or added value for those players? Because as a coach, you talked a little bit about obviously the level of coaching that was there, the impact, the guys that have done that. But from a player, what were some of the things the players walked away with, or some of the off courts or on court sessions outside of the games you guys were doing?
Well, with those type of players, because they elite, they can do everything. From a coach perspective, it's keeping them motivated. Staying positive with them. You have like a small group of those guys. They're motivated. Some of them, just because they're what their personality is. You have to, either bring them to the side or just going off of a good feeling, like how this kid gonna react. Some of the kids want to push. Some of them, you have to talk to them one on one. Stuff like that. But overall, when it comes to fundamentals and with those kids, knowing how to play, you especially during the games, you just try to try to, I guess, coach the egos.
Yep.
Not really the X's and O's with them or whatever. But I think the biggest takeaway. Then on top of that, like I go back to the past podcasts that we've had. I've pretty much seen those kids since they was in the sixth grade because of all the Chris Paul, John Lucas made hoops, Crossroads Elite camps that we've done. You don't see those kids, when they were young and they were good then. So seeing them now, at the Elite 100, they just taller, bigger.
Yep, they grew up on you a little bit. Yeah, I think of to bring it back to the USA camp with Coach Shaver. I mean, his kid Hudson Greer, who I believe he's in the top 50 or just outside of it right now, a kid that we've seen, at a couple different events, and has obviously blown up, grown, plays for Kevin down with pro skills down there. And he's just improved a ton. A kid, Parker Jefferson, who's another rising stars kid who I saw he was there. A kid, Sadiq White, who we touched on last time, who I think even just from our conversation 2 weeks ago has had about 17 or 18 different offers. So yeah, seeing those kids grow up and seeing, the one thing, even just to touch on again, just, the development and the work and those elite kids, there are kids that we saw that aren't I wasn't at Elite 100, but I saw the list of who was there. And there's kids that were top 20 at different events along the way that, stopped working or, you spoke about it. They don't want to play one way. And I think that also is, where hopefully we can add some value at Game Shots and in this podcast of, how you can continue to work on your weaknesses. And, from an IQ standpoint, if you're a player that wants to get to that level, just knowing some tendencies of, if I'm playing Tony, I know he's really good. He's going to blow by me with his right hand. So maybe I need to force him to his left. I've noticed, maybe I didn't start the game and I'm seeing his tendencies. If he's very comfortable catch and shoot, but I haven't seen him put him on the ground you get him, run him off the line. Now he starts having trouble, whatever that looks like. Obviously, Tony, Division I player, I'd have no chance of staying in front in general. But thinking the game when you're at those events or just against that competition, I think is very, very important. Coach, so Tone, who was somebody that you met or a player you saw that you hadn't previously seen that kind of surprised you, or a coach that had a little nugget of knowledge that you got to know a little bit better? What's just one, specific piece or little nugget we can take from you from that for those of us that weren't at that camp?
Well, the coach that I was helping at the night that the Elite 100 camp, Junior Burrow, him being playing in NBA with the Celtics and just having that same, I guess, old school mindset about how to coach and stuff like that. It was pretty much a breath of fresh air. And he was just schooling us on, how the generation now compared to the generation when I played and the generation when he played. So it was pretty cool to hear his perspective on it. Then all of us, we still in the group text, like I think Rasheed Wallace pointed out before the camp was over. He was like, before COVID hit, with the coaches they had at the Elite 100 camp, they haven't missed a day without somebody saying have a great day, or they just can giving words of encouragement, what they're reading, like what they're doing, checking up, stuff like that. So this, in this little group text that we're in, we kind of been doing that so far, whatever, until next year when
Well,
we meet up again. Which I'll see all those guys, throughout the year, maybe at camps and you know stuff like that. And also, I forgot to point out, before the Elite 100 camp, some of these kids came from the Pangos camp I think California or Vegas. It was,
I believe it was in Vegas
so
this year. But yeah, there was a lot. I know on following on social media, I did see there was a lot of kids that were finishing up,
so
and
some of those, yeah, so some of those kids, finished up there and came straight to the Elite 100 camp,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just it's like you can pretty much look at that in an NBA perspective. Traveling city to city, state to state, to play a game. So some of those kids were already tired even before they came to the League 100. Man, the competition was pretty good. So like when we did like the first day of the camp where you did skill work, you played in games, the energy was high. You seen good intensity, but you seen it go down until each day until the last day or whatever. But it
yep.
was pretty competitive. It was good, really good talent
Yeah.
there. But
Also going on was the Euro camp, the Adidas camp. One kid I do want to point out that we both have a connection to is Jackson Keith, who's a Raleigh Durham kid who plays on the 3SSB. He's been doing well. He performed very well at Pango's camp. He's a kid that is local here in North Carolina. Saw him last year at the this fall, the Elite 60. He was a top 40 kid at Rising Stars, and just kind of keeping in contact with him and following him. Yeah, like some of those travel schedules are crazy because once Pangos got done, some guys popped over to Elite 100. A couple guys hopped over to Europe to go play in the Adidas Europe. I forget exactly how it was branded, but there's kids. And right now, if you're a player that's looking for those opportunities, just understand there's some training. You got to make sure, once the summer comes, it's almost past the time to be nominated and things like that. And just, making sure you're staying in tune with what's going on, especially I think, mentioned with coaches and staying connected. One thing I did want to touch on that we got to do a better job, Tone, is connecting with the people that are part of your book club. On Friday, we had a whopping 0 people attend the coaches book club. So we may or may not be rescheduling that. But Tone, what can you give the people for just an update on the book club here as we got about a week left. I finished up the Mama Mentality yesterday. Really, really enjoyed it. I think I've told you on here and in person, you did a great job of picking the first book to be a picture book. But what can we expect from the Tony Sterling Basketball Coaches Book Club moving forward here as people are wrapping up the Mama Mentality, getting into Coach K by Ian O'Connor? What can we be looking for here these next 8 weeks of summer?
um, now you know how when you plan stuff, you don't know how your schedule gonna be. With the camps and stuff going on the past 3 weekends, kind of threw a wrench and all that. But we will continue to kind of we finished. The first book was the Mama Mentality book. Then next month is the Coach K book. Then while we're at Snow Valley, we'll be passing out books and stuff like that to coaches or whatever. I think it's just a work in progress, and I think throughout the year, especially after camp season is over with and school starts back, we can kind of, myself, be more consistent with that or whatever. But and like for example, past two weekends, I haven't journaled every day, so kind of fell off because of the camps, which don't really make excuses. Kind of build from that, but
Yep.
mainly just with the book reading, it's just building a habit. And maybe you can build a habit of reading. Maybe you can build a habit with doing something else, working out,
Hmm.
as far as you can use it with practice or when you're reading or whatever, you may get something from, Kobe Bryant, his regime of why he was so consistent being good, or Coach K, why he was, so consistent with, having great teams for, you know, those amount of years. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and so I guess as I'm hearing here, Tone, is what I'm thinking is for the Mamba mentality, just tweet us. Anybody that tweets at either Tony, myself, or our Game Shots Twitter account, just a couple little takeaways or some nuggets you want coaches to know. We will retweet that if there's any discussions you want to have. I know Tony loves to speak on the phone. I know I'm available. I could be a little bit tough to get with here the next few weeks as we're getting into camp season, but I think we'll go smaller scale, at least for the beginning. We may have to do in Snow Valley, we'll have a little live, maybe just do a live book discussion one of those days in between camps. Just talk about what different coaches are reading and little nuggets. Because I think when you talk about building a habit, I think number one, making sure it's something you enjoy doing is huge. And then number two, having some accountability with a group of peers. I think that's what Tony's created here with the Tony Sterling Basketball Book Club is, showing here's some good books that we can read, different levels, and just some little nuggets, knowledge nuggets you can take away. So continue to be reading. And I did just want to touch on one other program book or a book I'd recommend maybe coaches and or players read together. I'm a big audiobook guy myself, but it's called It Takes What It Takes. And it is by a Russell Wilson's strength conditioning, or excuse me, mental conditioning coach. And he talks a lot about it gives a lot of like quick stories in terms of, different mindset things and different professional athletes. I'm drawing a blank on the author's name, but he passed away about a year ago. And he did just, speaking a lot about, being neutral was his biggest thing of when something happens, it could be good or bad, right? Good or I'll give you an example from life. I mean, my flight to Houston, I tweeted about it. I had a layover on a direct flight, right? We took off, we got in the air about 15 minutes, and they said, hey, we got to go back to Charlotte. We got a mechanical issue. That was a big time inconvenience. We got to Houston about 2.5 hours later, but the fact that we were safe, things like that, I think is, looking at that neutrally of saying, hey, like I'm going to get there. I'm not missing a connection. There's different things around you. That would be just one book. That and The Culture Code are another book, especially for coaches, especially for maybe taking over a new job, things like that. I think it does a great job of giving you some pillars and maybe some different verbiage from things that as you take over a new program, and most 9 times out of 10, if you're taking over a job, it's because the job was open because somebody got let go or resigned, depending on what that situation looks like. And when you're coming in and building something new from a culture standpoint, having your pillars and communicating those pillars, and maybe there's a bridge. And that's one thing, especially in college or even in high school, you got your juniors and seniors, hopefully they're going to buy in, but they may not. So you may not, I want to say compromise your culture, but understand we have to do a couple of things that year one, our culture is going to look slightly different than year two. It's going to be a little bit closer in year 3, year 4. That's when your culture is really going to flourish from a perspective of you've got kids that, started as sophomores or freshmen or 8th graders in your program coming up. And now they know the expectation. They know how we communicate, they know your terminology, all of that. So just a couple nuggets. Additionally, and Coach Showalter also has his book coming out, which may also be affecting the Tony Sterling Basketball Coaches Book Club. That might be a read for the fall for everybody that goes to Snow Valley.
right.
Yeah. We'll preview that for the people. But Tone, so looking forward here, these next few weeks, you've got your live event. This will be the last high school live recruiting this weekend. And then guess what? We're at July, 4th of July. Make sure you're making good choices. High school seasons are going to be wrapping up here in June. I know a lot of high school coaches that don't coach club will be getting that little break. I hope that not only are they going to find a little time to recoup, but also, take a little time to get with your family, get with your people, and step away. I'm actually going to be going on a little backpacking trip in Grand Teton next week, so the pod will come out a little bit later. But I think, just that balance of recharging, going and doing and improving for yourself, but also can't pour from an empty cup. But Tone, I guess when you're moving in, we've got about 2 months of summer left. What are some things specifically that you're trying to improve on, or you would suggest players and, invest their time and their talent into the rest of the summer, as we're about a third of the way through?
And get away from basketball for a little bit.
Why though, Tony? Why? You're a guy that does it every day. Why is it important? I think I agree, but like, what's the rationale? Because somebody's always working harder, right? So what's the rationale of getting away if I know somebody else is in the gym that day?
It's just like working out or running. Sometimes your body gets tired and you need to rest, recharge. It's just like, for me, mentally, not tired of basketball. I love basketball, but I need to, get away from it after July for a couple of weeks, because just going from camp to camp, you know, in the gym all the time, kind of lags on you a little bit. So I think mentally, after I guess going in after next weekend and up until next camp, I can kind of recharge a little bit, before I start over with camps, and then after camp, you know, kind of rest a little bit before school starts.
Yeah.
It's kind of like with the guys in the NBA, they play those many games. I think with anything, give yourself at least 3 weeks of rest. It don't even have to be 3 straight weeks. It can be 2 weeks, then you back, then you do another week. But as long as you give yourself some type of some me time,
Yeah,
just
1000%.
and when
Yeah.
you come back, you'll be refreshed. You'll have more ideas of what you've done. Then you can think about what you learned, how you can do this and that, whatever. I think the biggest thing with me is, especially with our team, our guys were showing up, for practice, weightlifting, games, whatever. I want, you don't really worry about wins and losses during the summer. You never heard of state championship won, you know, in the summer. So I think we're building blocks of, being at practice every day.
Yep. That daily grind every
Or
day, every day, every day.
yeah, yeah. And then see if we can carry that over into July, even though we don't have nothing going on. Maybe just, they can lift every day and play pickup, because
Yep.
the training stuff is getting. I mean, our kids getting robotic, getting trained like they need to play.
Yep.
You can be fundamentally sound, but like, what you gonna do when you get out there on that road? There's so many
Yeah.
different things you can't prepare for when you working a kid out. It's just, if you work on the simple things, whatever, they have to find their own creativity with when it comes to basketball IQ, how to play in the game with all the stuff that you learn from
Yeah. And
training and stuff.
you touched on something. I can't remember if it was Coach Carruthers or Coach Monse said about energy and effort, right? Effort is my personal, how much I put into that. And I think recuperating and taking that rest really helps your effort, because you step away, you get that relaxation, whether it's just off your feet or your mind, getting that mental break. But they talked about energy being something. I give you my energy. The best thing I can do with my energy is give it away, right? Because I have it for me. If I have energy, I'm filled. And if you know me, I do have a little bit of energy. I'm usually popping, but I think where your energy, and one thing that reset and that step away does is it allows your energy to get refilled. So then you can continue to give it away. Cause I'm sure we've all heard you can't pour from an empty cup. And if your energy is low or you're, on the weekends, like you've been the last 3 weekends, you're spending the weekend in the airport, you fly there, spend the weekend in the airport, fly home, or like you did for Houston, 5-hour drive home after you drop me and wash off at the airport, being able to reset and refill that energy. Because your effort, I think, if you're a good player, great player, good coach, great coach, you don't really allow yourself to have bad energy days and you're used to giving your all. But I think where that reset is important. And I think one thing you said was very wise of it doesn't have to be 3 straight weeks. Like I'm taking a week or I'm taking 5 days next week when I fly out to do some hiking and some things. And I'll come back and I got 2 days and I'm right back in it. And then I'll take a couple days before Snow Valley. And then I'll take, 2 weeks after we get done with Snow Valley and Made Hoops at the end of July. I'm going to do a little shooting clinic with our friend Mike Pilgrim in Cincinnati. But after that, I believe I'm doing that August 1st. And then I'll have a break until Rising Stars that I think second or third weekend in August. So, step away, even though it is hard, coaches, players. I know Snow Valley is sold out. All those sessions, coaches, I don't think there are any more needs for coaching, but if you're looking forward to the future and things like that, I would say, make sure you're scheduling that break in, whether it's a vacation where you go somewhere like I'm doing, or you're just sitting in the AC down in the bootleg tone. I think, getting that reset is very important, and finding that time for you is critical. Otherwise, that's what we see with that burnout. So Tone, we got about a minute left. Is there anything, any shout outs you want to leave the people with on a final thought?
Big congrats to 2 guys that we know. Isaac Mills, he's going to be a GA for Wisconsin basketball program, and Alex Washington that did camp with us at Houston. He just got an assistant job at North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. So thought you'd never coach again, but you
I was
are.
going to love it. Yeah. And I think one thing we're big on this is, celebrating each other's success, Tone. And I'm so happy and proud of you for getting that Elite 100. That was a lot of hard work. And you've been grinding at this thing for 5 years. So if people, when they ask you, how did you do it? A lot of hard work, man. So I'm happy for you. Happy for those guys. Mills has been grinding. Obviously Wash has been great. Great to get to know him. He's from the crib. So, hey, we're with it. But hey, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week talking about, just continuing to get better. Thanks for tuning in. Share this with a friend, a teammate, or a coach. We appreciate your support. We'll see you next time.